Welcome to the world of science fiction. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss new stories. Enjoy the listening.
Jonathan paced the length of his grand living room, glancing occasionally at the ornate clock that hung above the fireplace. The sound of tires on the gravel driveway signaled the arrival of his new maid, a member of the alien race known as the Kalis. He adjusted his shirt cuffs and straightened his posture as the doorbell rang. Opening the door, he was greeted by the sight of Lyra, her slender figure framed by the doorway, her skin shimmering subtly under the Earth's sun. She wore a simple, yet elegant garment that flowed around her like mist over a river. "Mr. Jonathan Harper?" Lyra's voice was melodic, almost musical in tone. "Yes, please call me Jonathan." "Welcome to my home, Lyra," he replied, stepping aside to let her in. Lyra nodded slightly, stepping past the threshold with a graceful movement. "Thank you, Jonathan. I am here to serve and learn." As she entered, Jonathan noticed how her eyes took in the surroundings with an intelligent, curious gleam. "I hope you'll find the accommodations comfortable. Let me show you around." They walked through the expansive halls of his home, Jonathan pointing out the various rooms and explaining her duties. The tour ended in the kitchen, a modern space filled with stainless steel appliances and polished white surfaces. "As you can see, the kitchen is fully equipped. I enjoy cooking from time to time, but with my work schedule, it's been hard to keep up with daily meals," Jonathan explained. "I am proficient in several culinary styles," Lyra commented as she ran her fingers lightly over the countertop, "and I am eager to adapt to your taste preferences." "That sounds wonderful. I must confess, I'm curious about Kaylee cuisine as well. Perhaps you could prepare something traditional one of these evenings?" "I would be pleased to share a part of my culture with you," Lyra smiled, her eyes brightening. "It's a delightful way to bridge our worlds." As they spoke, the afternoon sun began to wane, casting long shadows across the floor. Jonathan glanced outside, then back at Lyra. "You've had a long journey to get here. Why don't you take some time to settle in? We can start fresh in the morning." "Thank you, Jonathan. I appreciate your kindness," Lyra said, a note of genuine gratitude in her tone. "Before you go, is there anything specific you need to make your stay more comfortable? I understand that our planet's environment can be quite different from yours." Lyra thought for a moment. "Your atmosphere is compatible with my physiology, but I would appreciate a room with morning light. It helps me to synchronize with your planet's rhythm." "I'll make sure of it. The east-facing room on the second floor would be perfect for that." "Let's go see if it suits you," Jonathan suggested, leading the way upstairs. As they settled her into her new room, Jonathan felt a sense of ease. Lyra was not just another employee. She was a bridge to a broader universe, an opportunity to learn and grow. As he left her to unpack, he found himself looking forward to the coming days with a renewed sense of interest for what the unique blend of human and Kaylee interactions would bring. Jonathan tapped lightly on Lyra's door early the next morning, a tray of coffee and pastries balanced in his hands as a gesture of welcome. He heard a soft, "Come in," and pushed the door open. Lyra was sitting by the window, the morning light casting a gentle glow on her features. She looked up, her expression brightening. "Good morning, Jonathan. What a pleasant surprise." "Good morning, Lyra. I thought we might start the day with a traditional Earth breakfast." "I hope you like coffee," he said, setting the tray down on a small table. "I am eager to try," she replied, eyeing the pastries with curiosity. As they ate, Jonathan initiated a conversation about their daily routines. "I usually start with checking my emails and messages. How do you begin your days on Kaylee?" Lyra sipped her coffee, a smile playing on her lips as she savored the taste. "We start by meditating to align our thoughts with the universe's energy. It helps us approach the day with clarity." "That sounds very peaceful. Maybe you could teach me sometime," Jonathan suggested, genuinely interested. "I would be happy to," Lyra agreed. "It could bring a new perspective to your mornings." They continued to chat about minor adjustments and preferences in household management. Jonathan was keen on understanding how to make Lyra feel more at home. After breakfast, they decided to spend the day organizing the house together, starting with the library. Jonathan had an extensive collection of books, both in digital and physical formats. "I believe you'll find this section interesting," he said, gesturing to a shelf filled with science and interstellar travel. Lyra's eyes widened with interest. Your collection is impressive. Back home, I used to teach children about the stars. Really? That's fascinating. Maybe you could help me understand some of these astrophysics concepts. I've always struggled with them, Jonathan admitted, pulling out a book with a complex diagram on the cover. Lyra chuckled softly. I'd be glad to help. Learning is more enjoyable when shared. As they rearranged books and dusted shelves, Jonathan found himself increasingly comfortable in Lyra's presence. Her insight into the sciences was not just academic. It was personal and filled with real-world experiences. Jonathan, may I ask about these photographs? Lyra pointed to a series of framed pictures on a desk. Ah, those are from various travels and family events. This one, he picked up a photo of a mountainous landscape, is from a hiking trip in the Rockies. Lyra looked at it with admiration. Your planet is very beautiful. The diversity of landscapes is much richer than on Kaylee. Maybe I could show you some of these places someday, Jonathan offered, pleased with her interest. I would like that very much, Lyra responded, her tone warm. Their conversation moved seamlessly from personal anecdotes to discussions about Earth's cultures and traditions. Jonathan explained various holidays and customs, which Lyra absorbed with keen interest. By the end of the day, they had not only reorganized the library but had also established a deeper, mutual understanding. As they stood surveying their work, Jonathan felt a sense of accomplishment, not just for the neat rows of books, but for the bridge being built between two vastly different beings sharing a single, small planet. Thank you for today, Jonathan. I learned a lot, Lyra said, her voice reflecting sincere appreciation. Me too, Lyra. Thank you, Jonathan replied, feeling that the day had brought them closer than he had anticipated. As Lyra left to retire for the evening, Jonathan remained in the library a little longer, contemplating the new world that was unfolding right within his home. A few weeks had passed since Lyra's arrival, and the initial formalities of their relationship had gradually given way to a more relaxed and friendly rapport. One evening, Jonathan found himself in the kitchen, observing Lyra as she prepared a Kaylee dish she had mentioned wanting to share with him. What are you making? Jonathan asked, intrigued by the array of unfamiliar ingredients spread out on the counter. It's called risolat. It's a traditional dish made during the Kaylee Harvest Festival, Lyra explained, her hands skillfully peeling what looked like a cross between a cucumber and a pear. It's sweet and savory with a bit of spice. Sounds delicious, Jonathan remarked, watching her movements. Need any help? Actually, yes, Lyra smiled, passing him a small knife and another strange fruit. Could you slice this? Just thin slices. As they cooked together, the kitchen filled with exotic aromas. Jonathan followed Lyra's instructions, occasionally stealing glances at her face illuminated by the soft kitchen lights. He was struck by how much he had come to enjoy these moments. Lyra noticed his gaze and chuckled. What is it? Just thinking how lucky I am to have such an excellent chef in the house, Jonathan replied with a grin. Lyra's laughter filled the room. I'm glad you think so. It's a pleasure to share my culture with someone so appreciative. As they worked, they began to share more personal stories. Jonathan spoke about his college days and early business ventures, while Lyra recounted tales of Kaylee, her family, and the vast orchards of her home world. Once the meal was ready, they sat down to eat. Jonathan took his first bite and his eyes widened. This is incredible, Lyra. You've really outdone yourself. I'm pleased you like it, Lyra said, her eyes twinkling. Food is a powerful way to connect, don't you think? It is, Jonathan agreed, savoring another bite. It's more than just nourishment. It's memory, it's comfort. It's a bit of home. Yes, exactly, Lyra nodded, her expression thoughtful. Sharing a meal, sharing stories. It brings us together, despite our differences. The conversation drifted to dreams and aspirations. Jonathan expressed his desire to expand his business into space technology, inspired by his growing interest in the stars and Lyra's knowledge of them. Lyra listened intently, her face alight with interest. With your vision and drive, I believe you will make it happen, and perhaps help bridge our worlds even more. I hope so, Jonathan said, feeling a surge of optimism. And maybe one day, we could even visit Kaylee. Lyra's smile faded slightly, a wistful look crossing her features. I would like that very much. To show you my world, as you have shown me yours. Their meal concluded with shared laughter and plans for future culinary experiments. They cleaned up together, the comfortable silence between them a testament to their deepening bond. As Lyra wiped down the counter, Jonathan stood back, watching her. Lyra, I'm really glad you're here, he said, the words coming out more heartfelt than he'd intended. Lyra turned to him, her expression soft. So am I, Jonathan. I didn't expect to find such friendship so far from home. That night, as Jonathan lay in bed, he realized how much Lyra had become a part of his life. She was no longer just his alien maid. She was a friend, a confidant, and perhaps something even more. The thought was both exhilarating and terrifying, but for the first time in a long time, Jonathan felt he was looking forward to whatever the future might bring. One sunny afternoon, as the garden's shadows grew longer and the air filled with the scent of blooming flowers, Jonathan and Lyra sat on the back porch discussing plans for a new greenhouse. Their conversations had increasingly turned toward shared projects, reflecting both their growing comfort with each other and their collaborative spirit. Jonathan was sketching a rough blueprint when he noticed Lyra seemed unusually quiet. What do you think about using solar panels for the roof? It could be good for the environment and efficient for us, he said, trying to catch her eye. Lyra nodded absently, her usual spark of engagement missing. Yes, that sounds practical. Jonathan, there's something I need to tell you. Putting aside his sketches, Jonathan focused on her, sensing the seriousness of the moment. What is it, Lyra? Is everything okay? She took a deep breath, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. I'm not sure how to say this. I'm pregnant. With twins. Jonathan's pencil dropped, his mouth agape. Pregnant? But how? We haven't. It's not what you think, Lyra hurried to explain, her voice calm yet firm. Kalis can conceive in different ways. Sometimes, it's a biological response to environmental factors or deep emotional connections. It seems my body has interpreted my happiness and comfort here as a sign. Pregnant with twins, Jonathan repeated, still trying to wrap his mind around the news. Lyra, are you okay with this? How are you feeling? I'm still processing it myself, she admitted. On Kaylee, this is rare and usually celebrated. But here, I am far from my people and the traditions that would guide me. Jonathan reached out, covering her hands with his own. You're not alone here, Lyra. We'll figure this out together. Lyra gave him a grateful smile. Thank you, Jonathan. I appreciate that more than you can know. They spent the next few hours talking about what this meant for each of them and the practicalities of the situation. It was uncharted territory, yet as they discussed, Jonathan was struck by the profound connection they shared. So, what do we need to do? Are there things to prepare? Things you need from your world? Jonathan asked, his business acumen kicking in, focusing on actionable steps. There are some Kaylee nutrients and care routines I'll need to follow to ensure the health of the twins. I can teach you about them, Lyra explained. And maybe we could add a space in the greenhouse designed for a small Kaylee garden. It would be good to grow some things from home. That's a brilliant idea, Jonathan said, already doodling modifications to the greenhouse plants. A Kaylee garden here, for you and the twins. As the day faded into evening, they had outlined a tentative plan that included everything from healthcare to how they would integrate Kaylee cultural teachings for the children. Despite the unexpected nature of the news, Jonathan felt a burgeoning sense of commitment and care towards Lyra and their future. I guess we're more than just housemates now, Jonathan joked lightly, trying to ease the gravity of their planning. Lyra chuckled, the sound mingling with the rustle of the leaves in the gentle evening breeze. Yes, it seems we are partners now, in more ways than one. That night, as Jonathan lay in bed, his thoughts were a whirl of emotions. Surprise, nervousness, excitement. Life had thrown him a curveball, but as he drifted off to sleep, he felt a resolve solidifying within him. He was ready to face this new challenge, not alone, but together with Lyra. This unexpected journey might just be the most rewarding of his life. In the weeks following Lyra's announcement, the atmosphere in Jonathan's home took on a new shape, infused with a sense of purpose and anticipation. One evening, As they relaxed in the living room with a collection of Kaylee literature spread between them, Jonathan looked over to Lyra with curiosity brimming in his eyes. Lyra, you mentioned before that twins are rare among your people. What's the significance of having twins in Kaylee culture? He asked, eager to understand more about her heritage. Lyra picked up one of the books, flipping it open to a marked page. In Kaylee lore, twins are often seen as a sign of great fortune and potential. They're believed to be bearers of balance, strength, and harmony. Their birth is a celebratory event that brings the community together in ways few other events do. Jonathan nodded, fascinated. Is there a special way your people care for twins or prepare for their arrival? Yes, actually. The community usually gathers to create a circle of support. It's both a physical and spiritual circle, involving songs, offerings, and pledges of guidance, Lyra explained, her voice tinged with a hint of homesickness. Sounds like a beautiful tradition. Maybe we can do something similar here? I mean, in our own way, Jonathan suggested, already thinking of how to adapt such a meaningful tradition to their current setting. Lyra's face lit up at the idea. I would love that. It would mean a lot to me and, I believe, to the twins as well. Encouraged by her enthusiasm, Jonathan spent the next few days researching and reaching out to his network to find experts in alien human cultures and childcare. He wanted to blend their knowledge with Lyra's traditions to prepare for the twins in the best possible way. One afternoon, Jonathan arranged for a cultural consultant to meet with them and discuss how they might integrate Kaylee traditions into their modern Earth lifestyle. Lyra prepared a small presentation on Kaylee child-rearing practices, eager to share and find common ground. As the consultant listened intently, Lyra detailed, Kaylee children are taught the importance of community and the balance of nature from an early age. We use stories, music, and dance to instill these values. Jonathan, taking notes, chimed in, it's important for us that the twins feel connected to both of their heritages. We're thinking of creating a space in the home that reflects Kaylee culture, perhaps decorating their room with elements from Kaylee art and nature. The consultant nodded appreciatively. Blending cultures in the home is a wonderful way to raise well-rounded individuals. You might also consider language lessons. Being bilingual, or in this case, bicultural from an early age can be very beneficial. Lyra and Jonathan exchanged a look of agreement. We'll definitely incorporate that, Jonathan said, his mind already racing with ideas. The rest of their meeting focused on practical steps and preparations, from dietary considerations to educational materials appropriate for children with a mixed heritage. By the end of the session, they had a solid plan in place, and Lyra felt a wave of relief and excitement wash over her. Later that night, as they sat down with a cup of tea, Lyra reached over and squeezed Jonathan's hand. Thank you for being so open and supportive about all of this. It's more than I ever hoped for when I came here. Jonathan squeezed back, his heart full. I'm just as thankful, Lyra. We're going to make this work, for us and for our twins. It's a new chapter for all of us. Their conversation lingered into the evening, filled with plans and dreams for the future. As they talked, it was clear that the journey ahead would be one of learning and love, not just for the twins, but for Jonathan and Lyra as well. They were building a family, a new life, and a bridge between two worlds, one day at a time. As the days grew shorter, the preparations for the twins' arrival became a central focus for both Jonathan and Lyra. The greenhouse construction was underway, and Jonathan had fully embraced the idea of adding a Kaylee garden. Every detail, from the soil mix to the types of plants that would thrive on Earth, was planned meticulously. One crisp morning, Jonathan and Lyra found themselves in a local nursery, surrounded by rows of plants. Jonathan was reading a label on a shrub when Lyra approached him, holding a small, delicate plant with blue-tinged leaves. This one reminds me of the Celera, she said, admiring the plant's soft leaves. On Kaylee, it's considered a nurturing plant. We place them in the home as a symbol of growth and care. Jonathan looked at it thoughtfully, then smiled. Then we'll get several of them. If we can't bring Kaylee here, we'll bring what we can of it. They gathered a collection of plants, each with a specific purpose or meaning, as Lyra explained. Jonathan felt he was gaining a richer understanding of her culture, something he hadn't expected to experience in such depth. As they checked out, he noticed the cashier giving them curious looks, perhaps intrigued by the unique assortment of plants or by the warm dynamic between them. Once back home, they spent the afternoon setting up the greenhouse. Jonathan handled the heavier work, moving pots and arranging the larger plants, while Lyra carefully positioned the smaller ones, ensuring they received the right amount of sunlight. "Did you ever think you'd be creating an interplanetary garden?" Jonathan joked, wiping a bit of soil from his hands. Lyra laughed, brushing her hair back from her face. "Never in my life. But this is meaningful. I feel at home, thanks to you." Their shared laughter carried through the greenhouse, mingling with the soft rustling of leaves and the faint hum of insects drawn to the plants. As they continued working, they began discussing plans for the nursery. They wanted to make it a space where both Earth and Kaylee elements would coexist, a place that would represent both of their cultures and give their children a tangible connection to each heritage. "Maybe we could include some art from Kaylee?" Jonathan suggested. "I know a few galleries that work with alien art forms. We could commission something unique for the nursery walls." Lyra's face lit up with enthusiasm. "That would be wonderful. Kaylee art is very symbolic, with patterns representing different life stages and values. I would love for the twins to grow up surrounded by those symbols." They spent the rest of the afternoon sketching ideas and designing the room. Jonathan was surprised at how naturally they collaborated. Their ideas flowed, merging seamlessly. He realized that in many ways, they already operated like a family, each supporting and encouraging the other. As evening approached, they took a break, sitting on the porch and watching the fading light. Lyra leaned back, a contented sigh escaping her. "Today was perfect," she said softly, glancing at Jonathan. "I've never felt this grounded and so connected to both worlds." Jonathan reached out, covering her hand with his own. "I feel the same way. I never thought my life would take this path, but I wouldn't trade it for anything." A comfortable silence settled over them, each lost in their thoughts yet fully present in each other's company. As the stars began to appear in the sky, Lyra's gaze drifted upward, her expression soft and reflective. "Do you ever wonder what the twins will be like?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "All the time," Jonathan replied, smiling. "I imagine they'll be curious, intelligent, and probably a bit stubborn, given who their parents are." Lyra laughed, her eyes twinkling. "You might be right about that." They talked about their hopes and dreams for their children, envisioning what their lives would be like, the values they wanted to pass on, and the world they hoped to create for them. It was a quiet, intimate moment, one that Jonathan knew he would remember for years to come. That night, as they each retreated to their rooms, Jonathan felt a profound sense of gratitude. His home, once filled only with his own ambitions and projects, was now alive with purpose and companionship. This shared journey with Lyra had transformed him, revealing depths of care and commitment he hadn't known he was capable of. And as he lay in bed, his thoughts wandered to the future. A future filled with the laughter of children, the blending of cultures, and a life he was eager to share, step by step, with Lyra. The months of preparation had passed swiftly, and one chilly morning, Jonathan was awakened by a soft but urgent knock on his bedroom door. He blinked, rubbing his eyes as he realized Lyra stood there, a mixture of excitement and apprehension on her face. "It's time, Jonathan," she said, her voice calm but laced with anticipation. Jonathan's heart leapt. "Are you sure? Is everything all right?" Lyra nodded, managing a small smile. "Yes, but I think it's happening faster than expected." Without hesitation, Jonathan jumped out of bed. "Let's get you comfortable," he said, guiding her toward the room they had set up as a nursery. They'd prepared it with care, adding symbols from Kaylee culture alongside Earth's soft, welcoming touches. It felt like a sacred space, a blending of both worlds. Once she was settled, he knelt by her side, holding her hand. "Do you want me to call the doctor? We have everything ready, just in case." Lyra shook her head, her breathing steady but deep. "No, it's different for us. I can feel it happening naturally. Just stay with me." Jonathan nodded, feeling a surge of responsibility and warmth. He didn't want to be anywhere else. As the hours passed, he stayed close, offering her water, holding her hand, and keeping her as comfortable as possible. They shared quiet conversations in between, his gentle reassurances mixed with her calm, guiding breaths. "You're doing amazing, Lyra," he murmured, watching her face as she managed through each stage. Lyra's gaze met his, filled with gratitude. "It's easier with you here, Jonathan. I can feel your support. It's grounding me." He squeezed her hand, his own heartbeat racing. "I wouldn't be anywhere else. We're doing this together." Finally, just as dawn's first light crept into the room, Lyra's eyes brightened, her breathing settling into a calm rhythm. And then, a soft cry filled the room, followed by another. Jonathan's eyes widened as he realized it, two tiny, beautiful beings, born into their shared world. He watched, awestruck, as Lyra cradled the twins, her face glowing with joy. Carefully, she handed one of the babies to Jonathan, who took the tiny bundle with both awe and tenderness. "Lyra, they're perfect," he whispered, his voice catching. The little one in his arms blinked up at him, an expression of calm curiosity that stole his breath away. Lyra's eyes filled with tears as she watched him. "They have both of us, Jonathan. They carry both worlds within them." For a few moments, they simply sat together, marveling at the miracle in their arms, feeling the weight of the journey that had brought them to this point. Jonathan felt a deep peace settle over him, a contentment he'd never known. "Have you thought about names?" he asked softly, looking from one baby to the other. "I have," Lyra replied, her voice tender. "One Kaylee and one Earth name for each, if that's all right with you." Jonathan smiled, nodding. "That sounds perfect." As they whispered the names over their newborns, each name carrying meaning from both their worlds, Jonathan felt his heart swell. This was more than he'd ever expected from life. A family, a new beginning, and a bond that had grown beyond anything he could have imagined. In that quiet morning light, they shared a look of understanding, knowing that their journey was only beginning. Together, they had created something extraordinary, two new lives, born of love, destined to bridge two worlds. The weeks following the birth of the twins were filled with a new rhythm, a life that brought Jonathan and Lyra even closer together as they cared for their children. The early mornings, the shared sleepless nights, and the quiet moments spent watching their newborns created a world of their own. They had become a family in every sense of the word. One evening, Jonathan and Lyra sat side by side in the nursery, rocking the twins to sleep. The soft hum of lullabies from Kaylee mixed with Earth's gentle tunes as they both took turns singing to calm the babies. Jonathan glanced over at Lyra, a peaceful smile on his face. "I never imagined my life would look like this," he said quietly. "But I wouldn't change a thing." Lyra smiled back, adjusting the tiny blanket wrapped around the baby she held. "Neither would I. It's more than I ever dreamed." As the twins drifted into slumber, they set them gently in their crib, standing together to watch them for a moment, content in the silence of their small world. Jonathan placed a hand on Lyra's shoulder, giving her a soft squeeze. "We've come a long way, haven't we?" Lyra nodded, her eyes never leaving the crib. "Yes, and we have so much further to go. But I feel ready for it. With you, with them. I feel grounded." They moved quietly to the living room, sitting on the couch with a warm cup of tea. Jonathan turned to Lyra, a thoughtful expression on his face. "I've been thinking about the future, about what we're building here, and what it means for the twins, for us." Lyra raised her brows, curious. "What are you thinking?" Jonathan set down his tea and took her hand, a warm smile spreading across his face. "I'd like to make our commitment official, not just for the twins, but for us. I want us to be together, in every way." A look of surprise, then joy, crossed Lyra's face. She squeezed his hand, her voice soft. "Jonathan, yes. I would be honored." They shared a quiet moment, their hands intertwined, as the weight of the decision settled between them. This wasn't just a union between two people. It was a blending of their lives, their worlds, and a promise to each other. Jonathan chuckled, breaking the silence. "So, do Kalis have any traditions for this kind of commitment?" "I'd like to do it right." Lyra laughed, nodding. "We do. There's a bonding ceremony, something simple but significant. It involves creating a circle of intention with natural elements, pledging to each other within that space." "I'd love that," Jonathan said, his eyes warm. We can incorporate a few Earth traditions, too. Maybe a small gathering here, just us and a few close friends. Over the next few days, they planned their ceremony together, blending the customs of both their worlds into something uniquely their own. Jonathan arranged for a few close friends to join them, while Lyra gathered items for the Kaylee Circle, a few crystals, leaves, and tiny symbols from her home world, representing life and growth. The day of the ceremony arrived, quiet and intimate. Jonathan wore a simple suit, and Lyra draped herself in a garment from her world, flowing and light, with a radiant, otherworldly glow. They stood in the circle they had created, hand in hand, surrounded by elements from both worlds. Jonathan looked into Lyra's eyes, his voice steady. I promise to stand by you, to honor both our paths, and to cherish the family we've created together. Lyra's eyes filled with warmth as she replied, I promise to walk beside you, to share in our worlds, and to build a life together for ourselves and our children. Afterward, they celebrated quietly with their friends, laughter and joy filling the room. Their small, shared world had grown with the presence of loved ones who supported their journey. As evening settled, Jonathan and Lyra stood together, watching the twins sleep, both of them feeling an overwhelming sense of peace and fulfillment. Jonathan wrapped an arm around Lyra's shoulders, pulling her close. Here's to our future, he whispered. Lyra rested her head against him, her voice soft. Yes, to our future, and all the beautiful moments yet to come.